Hello and happy Tuesday, which is of course my book reviews day, and today I would like to talk to you about The Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig, published right in the height of the COVID pandemic. I've been sitting on this one for a couple years now. Finally decided to take a dive in. I know it received a lot of praise back in the day, particularly from the horror community and a lot of Stephen King vibes. And I agree. Like the first act in particular kept giving me all sorts of Stephen King Pet Sematary vibes. I know it was nominated for Best Horror Novel from Goodreads. Didn't win, but it was nominated, which, is an honor to be nominated. And so we have The Book of Accidents. It's a family tale, even if you're not going to be reading it to your children. It follows Nate, Maddie, and Oliver as they move into Nate's father's house. Nate's father has recently passed. He had a contentious relationship with Nate. You'll learn more about the relationship throughout the novel, particularly in the interludes. But let's just say it doesn't take long before some weird stuff starts going on in the house. He starts seeing, the ghostly visage of his father. They start encountering some weird situations. Maddie's artwork starts taking on properties all its own, and it's some weird stuff going on. Like I said, it gives me some Pet Sematary vibes, which is further exacerbated by the fact that you have the neighbor Jed, who is a half step and one letter away from Judd from Pet Sematary. But I will say, if you're going to dive into this novel thinking, I want like a pure horror novel, like a Stephen King horror novel, you're probably not going to get it. That's why I mentioned earlier that it's really the first act that gives you strong Stephen King vibes. As the novel develops and you start to learn more and more about the characters, about the situation, about what's going on, Chuck Wendig starts straddling between a couple different genres. I was debating on saying the other genre, but then I realized, while just reviewing the back of it, that Alma Katsu mentions science fiction in there. So I guess, if it made the back cover, it's not going to be a spoiler for me to say. The Book of Accidents ends up kind of falling in between horror and sci-fi. So if you're going in expecting pure horror, you're probably going to be disappointed in the end. I mean, there are some creepy incidents that happen in the novel, and it definitely gets under your skin in like the first act. But as I said, as the novel goes on, you do kind of find it falling more into science fiction territory, kind of like sci-fi horror, if you will. But it's a good read. Chuck Wendig handles the genre shifts very well. The characters are very likable. I mean, I enjoyed all three of the Graves, Nate, Maddie, and Oliver. Like I said, Nate has a contentious relationship and a troubled past with his father that you'll learn more about. Maddie has her own strange past with her own childhood, but she's grown up into I don't want to say starving artist, because, they're not quite starving, but she's turned into an eccentric artist whose art is occasionally getting the better of her. And Oliver, the son, is highly empathetic, like to the point where he can feel others' pain. It's kind of affecting his own childhood and his own upbringing. And, it's fun to dive in and learn more of the characters. They are very progressive parents, I will say that. And one of the biggest positives is that it kind of defies horror tropes, where usually if you have a house where some spooky stuff is going on, all of the characters kind of keep it to themselves. They're like, maybe it was just the wind. They don't necessarily do that in here. Once some spooky stuff starts going on and they realize, this is something weird going on, they have no problem telling each other, and that is such a breath of fresh air. One criticism I did have, and it's particularly just the first half, is that Maddie, the mother, almost seems like a distant mother in the first half. And maybe that was intentional. I'm not really sure. But most of the interactions between Oliver and one of his parents is Oliver and Nate, the father. It's like Maddie doesn't really interact with Oliver too much in the first half. There's definitely a lot more interaction in the second half, but which I'm very thankful for. Otherwise, I was like, well, okay, you're kind of a weird mother. But it all comes back around. I mean, it's very interesting. Like I said, learning about the characters. It is a very long novel. Not that 500 pages is very long in many cases, but in this particular case, it is. They probably could have trimmed like 100 to maybe even 200 if you're feeling gutsy of the pages without losing too much and kind of maintaining the core of the story. But that's fine though. I mean, 11/22/63 is amongst some of the constant readers' favorite Stephen King novels. I think that could have been trimmed out a bit. And that's not to say that the Book of Accidents is anything like 11/22/63. I'm just saying that for size comparison, some people love the length of that, and they think it was absolutely perfect. I'm of the mind of, you probably could have trimmed a little bit here. But I totally understand him not trimming it, because even as his dedication here says, he says, hell with it, this one's for me. And you can tell Chuck Wendig had fun writing this novel. He definitely had the ideas there, and he definitely wanted to get those words on the paper. So you can't really take points away for it being a long novel. It never got to the point where I was bored out of my mind. It's definitely not a boring tale as the pages go on. It's just one of those ones where you're like, you probably could have cut some of this and still maintained the actual story itself. But anyways, the Book of Accidents. It can be purchased wherever books are sold. I mean, you could probably, I imagine there's paperback copies out there now. This was the hardcover from Del Rey that I had purchased back during the pandemic. I purchased mine from the Signed Page, which is a great site if you want signed books. They usually sign the books, the actual title pages. This, being during the pandemic, had Chuck sign the dust jacket, but, it is what it is. But you can find copies where books are sold, and most likely in paperback too, because this is approaching 3 years old. So yeah, check out Chuck Wendig. It's my first read by him. It's certainly not going to be my last. I'll definitely want to check out more by him, especially if his other novels are more firmly in horror. I don't mind sci-fi and horror mixed together, but I had gone in kind of expecting to be pure horror. And like I said, if you are expecting pure horror, you're probably going to be a little disappointed in those regards. So thank you guys very much for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I have a book review every week on Tuesdays, as well as plenty of book unboxing videos in between those book review videos. So plenty for you to watch. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you around next time.